Welcome back to the Summer Reset series. I'm Monica. I'm a therapist and content creator, and I don't think that we talk about personal finances enough. Growing up, we really didn't talk about finances at all. It wasn't until I became an adult and I wanted more financial freedom. I wanted just to learn more. And also, it really didn't even start until I actually got married, and then I had to kind of merge my finances together. I started a business. I have, for the past 5 years, learned a lot about personal finance. And while I'm not a financial advisor, I am a therapist, and I do know that there's just a lot of emotion tied to finances. And sometimes finances can really be the biggest struggle when it comes to our personal mental health. So I thought that it'd be perfect, since it's summer, mid-year, that we do a financial check-in, and I share with you just the steps that I do to check on my finances, see what's going right, see what's going wrong, and let you in on just some of the tools that I also use. So let's go ahead and get started with the very first thing that you're going to need when it comes to just assessing your current financial situation. I want you to think of it like checking your GPS before going to a trip. You need to know your starting point, and you also need to know where you're headed, right? This can probably be the most scariest part, but avoiding our finances and our money, it's not going to make it go away. So the best thing that you can do is try to tackle it as soon as you can. The more that we avoid, the harder it gets to do certain things. Again, these are all my opinions, so you can definitely work with a financial advisor. I know that was one of the first steps. I think I didn't really think about money all that much until after I graduated from grad school and I got married. And that's when I'm like, oh wow, like I have to share finances now. I came from a single parent home. And so a lot of the times I saw us struggling. I saw us kind of like this feast or famine, kind of if we have money, we spend it. Savings wasn't really a thing. And I feel like now, even just my family, they've learned a lot about money and how to be better with money too. Off the bat, I want you to assess your current financial situation. Like I said, you want to think of it as like using your GPS, where you have a starting point, and then you definitely want to have an end point, right? Maybe some financial goals. But the very first thing is just kind of tackling our numbers, seeing where we're at. So the very first thing is our net income. What our net income is, this is the amount of money you take home after taxes and deductions. Knowing your net income is so crucial, as it dictates how much you can realistically allocate towards your different expenses. So that was the very first thing that we figured out in terms of like combining our incomes together. Me and my partner do have combined incomes. I do have a business. I'm a therapist, so I have a private practice, and my business is separate from my personal income. Like I pay myself out of the business, and I'll have another video where I talk a little bit more about business finances and things like that. I actually have my bookkeeper who's going to come and talk about, the different things that you need to know when it comes to budgeting and paying yourself and things like and making profit for your business. So this is not that video, but you want to know what your net income is what you take home, right? Because that's basically the money that you're going to use when it comes to like expenses, paying off debt, savings, right? You're going to want to know the number of expenses. So track all of your expenses. This is including your fixed costs, right? So these are things that don't generally change over time. So these are your rent, your mortgage, your car payments, your insurance, pretty much those things that are pretty essential. And then the variable costs. So these are food, entertainment, utilities. Sometimes that could fluctuate. Not that utilities are not essential, but they do fluctuate sometimes. Like our electricity bill might not be the same, especially here in Texas. Understand where your money goes each month is critical for budgeting. I have used several apps in the past, but currently my partner and I use RocketMoney. It used to be called Truebill, and we've been using this, I want to say, since 2022. So it's been 2 years since I started using RocketMoney, and it's made it easy for me. I connect my bank to the app, and it helps me just kind of track all of that. But before that, we would use a like budget spreadsheet, but I just felt like it was so exhausting to have to put all the different transactions. And so for me, that wasn't the thing. Like for me, the less that I have to think about it, the more automated it is, the easier it is. So tracking your expenses, personally, I recommend that you track for at least 2 to 3 months before making any changes, because not every month is the same, at least in my household, but fixed income and then some variables that can change as well. I personally try to keep it as fixed as possible when it comes to like paying myself out of the business. I pay myself a salary. I pay myself the same thing every month. So we can really just have a kind of like this one income that we know we're going to have to use for every month. That's different for everybody, but for me, that kind of works for me. But yeah, you want to make sure that you start tracking all those expenses, and it can be overwhelming off the bat just to kind of, see what all your expenses are. You kind of need this in order before you change anything. That was one of the things that we did before we started doing any like debt payout or anything like that, because we needed to know what we were spending our money on. And then the next numbers that you need to know is your debt level. So keeping track of the total amount of debt you owe. This includes your credit card debt, your student loans, your car loans, any other personal loans. Understanding your total debt is important for managing your repayment and financial planning. This is probably scary. I remember being so scared, especially when I had to share my debt to my partner. Like, could be super scary. But I thought, hey, we're in this together, so we're going to have to figure it out. So I remember that this is just checking where you're at. So I don't want you to see this as like you're judging yourself or anything like that. I just want you to see what these numbers are. Again, right now, all we're doing is we're just getting all the numbers. We're not making decisions. We're just getting all the numbers to assess where we're at. And so, make sure that you have all those things in place. Again, credit cards, student loans, all that. You want to know those numbers. And then the last one, this could be relevant or not relevant to you, but your savings. Like, if you have savings, what do you have in that savings account? Do you have any savings? It's okay if you don't, but if you do get the numbers right, write them down where you can review how much you save towards any specific goals that you may have, like such as like if you're saving for retirement, down payment on a house, vacation. This helps gauge your progress and whether you need to adjust your saving strategies. And this is all of the numbers that when we started working with a financial advisor, we first needed to know and have them sent out to her. And I know what you're thinking, that maybe a financial advisor might not be accessible to you, but when we first started a financial advisor, it was pretty affordable. So I hope that you do some research and find a financial advisor that works just for you. Again, we didn't know a lot about finances, and it could be so overwhelming on the internet to figure out what is the best route for you when it comes to how you're going to tackle your money. And so I think it's important that we work with someone, or that you do try to figure out, maybe just stick to one or two people that are giving you some financial advice or some financial insights, and stick to maybe their plan so that you could see if it works for you or not. Now that you have all those numbers, I'm going to give you some things to journal, because we love to journal around here. Again, this is a financial reset, financial checkup. And so I'm going to ask you some of these questions, and I want you to write them down. And again, there's no judgment. These are just facts. Money does not have to be emotional, even though I know it can be. But right now, you're just trying to figure out where you're at. So one of the questions is kind of a question, and there's like questions within a question. So the first question is, am I living within my means? This is more kind of like lifestyle stuff. Like, sometimes we're just not making enough money because it's just not fair in this economy. We're not getting paid enough and stuff like that. And sometimes we just generally don't make enough money. But then there's other times where it is a lifestyle creep and we are living beyond our means. So I want you to ask yourself, am I living within my means? Do I spend less or more than I earn each month? How much of that money spent is fixed versus variable? Am I accumulating credit card debt to cover regular expenses? Do I have a budget? And why does budgeting feel restrictive to me? Do I just not know how to budget? I had to ask myself that question, because for me, budgeting felt very restrictive. Like, I don't want to cut out anything, right? And so one of the things me and my partner did is we ended up not calling it a budget. We call it like a quality of life. This is our quality of life. And what kind of quality of life do we want to have? And again, looking realistically at our numbers, what we could afford, and really based it on the things that we genuinely wanted to invest our money in, whether that was wellness or coffee shops or date nights, things like that are more variable. That we could definitely either reduce that amount, change that amount, get more creative when it comes to not spending money on some of those categories. So I want you to ask that question. The second question is, are my financial goals clearly defined, and am I on track to meet them? So, what are your short term and long term financial goals? I think this is so important to set those goals, make them realistic. Again, looking at all the numbers is going to help you figure that out. Like maybe it is getting out of debt, maybe it is increasing your income, maybe it is, saving more for a house, like whatever that is. What are your short and long term goals? And am I consistently saving a portion of my income towards these goals, right? Like, are we actually putting in these buckets or are we not? Because it might not be realistic. Sometimes we think we have a goal, but really we need to do something else first. For instance, before we even started thinking about retirement, all these things, we had to get out of consumer debt. At the time, I thought I had so much consumer debt, but I actually didn't. I had 1,000 in one card and then 500 in another one. It was those stupid things when I was young and I was 18 and I got my first store credit card, Victoria's Secret. That's what I got, my first store credit card. And I just didn't really know why I got it. I just thought, oh, you have to get a credit card because why not? And I would just use it and I would pay it, but sometimes I just wouldn't. I would just make the minimum payments, and actually I would always pay. I just would always make the minimum payment, so I didn't know anything about interest and things like that. So I had to pay off that card, the Victoria's Secret card, and then my credit card, my first credit card that had $1,000 on it. And it was because I was not making enough money. And so I had to tackle that. So those were the two main things that I had as far as like consumer debt. And then I had my car, which is completely paid off now, which is awesome. And then I had my student loans, which thankfully it is below the average of how many people have in student loans. So I'm really grateful for that. Currently, that's the only debt that I have, which is student loans. But I had to ask myself before, like, what are our goals? And the goals was first to take off the consumer debt, pay off the car. Those were kind of the things that were our personal goals. And then, paying out of retirement, things like that. So again, the scary part and the reality is you might feel behind on some of these things, and this is totally okay. I just want you to kind of figure out what those goals are for you. And the next question is, how well am I prepared for emergencies? Do I have an emergency fund, and is it sufficient to cover unexpected events like medical emergencies or job loss? So that was important to us too. As soon as we got, paid off our debt, the next thing was having an emergency fund, and we worked with our financial advisor to figure that out, especially because one of my goals was to become a business owner. And so for me, it was important that we had enough money in that bucket so that in case something happened, I had fluctuating months. We had this. Now everything, like, I am pretty consistent with how much money I make every month. And so we never ended up having to use that emergency fund. But some of these things, again, do you have it? Do you need to work towards it? Like sometimes we want to I'm going to start the business first before I even stay in your 9 to 5. I stayed in my 9 to 5 for so long because I really wanted that, consistently being able to work on my goals before I ventured out in entrepreneurship. And I also wanted to have a plan of am I at least making enough of am I at least making half of what my 9 to 5 paycheck is? And if so, that means that once I, have more time, I can actually increase that to probably either meet the same salary that I had on my 9 to 5 or pass that salary. So that's kind of what I ended up thinking about when it comes to preparing for emergencies. You're going to have different stages of life where you might need a different set of emergency fund. So do you have that? The next one is, how effective is my debt management? So maybe you don't have any debt management strategy, but what strategies are you using to pay off this debt? There's so many. There's the debt snowball. There's the debt avalanche. Again, you can try all these different ones and see what fits for you. No one strategy is the best strategy, at least in my opinion, and I think everyone works differently. Psychologically, everyone works differently when it comes to what motivates them, what keeps them determined when it comes to meeting financial milestones. So just ask yourself this question. The next is, am I maximizing my income potential? Are there opportunities for me to increase my income through career advancement, side hustles, or other income streams? For me, I've had to ask myself, in what ways can I make more money other than just seeing clients one-on-one? Because I could see more clients, but sometimes that could be too much for me. So I ventured into starting a YouTube channel, starting my podcast. Again, none of these were easy things, but they were things that I considered to have extra income. Whenever I first started, even before I became a business owner, I did like on the side podcast editing for other podcasts. So I just looked at the skills that I had and I started making money in other ways. And so do you have any income, like any maximizing your income opportunities or ways that you can make more money? And then, am I adequately investing in my professional development? And that just means like, are you actively working on things to better yourself in terms of your career development, or even if it's like financial literacy? Again, are you doing all these things to help you figure out, how to be better when it comes to finances or obtaining opportunities? Questions you need to be asking yourself for a reset. And then, I love this question. What are my financial vulnerabilities? So what financial risks am I currently facing, and how can I mitigate these risks effectively? At the time, I want to say again, when we started all this, is back in 2019 when I got married, the financial risk was just like paying off the debt, right? Like paying off more, having more interest on those cards and just not feeling like I keep up, right, with paying off the interest. So it was like I would never be able to see a dent in those like small debts. And so that was kind of the financial risk I had, right? So just things to kind of consider. At the time, I don't even think we had an emergency fund. So again, like if something happened, like it would be devastating, or not devastating, but at least it would take, for us to maybe have to use a card or something like that. So those are some things that, like, when you think about financial vulnerabilities, where you're at, and then how can I mitigate those risks effectively, right? So for us, even though we had to invest in a financial advisor, it was so important for us because we thought it's risky if we don't even have any advice that actually focuses on own personal finance. So I'm going to mitigate this risk by getting more information and start an effective plan. So something to think about. So these are all the questions that can help you easily assess where you're at and where your real financial goals need to be. Now, the next thing, after you've kind of assessed all those questions, is budgeting. I think a lot of us don't like budgets. Like I said, for me, budgeting was really restrictive, but when the summer rolls in, I do feel that it's hard to budget. We have trips, life stuff, right? Like there's just more things in the summer, I feel, that just like get out of hand. For me, I'd rather like to tackle it ahead of time, budget for the things that I need to do, or be realistic of maybe the things that I can't do. Like I said, before we committed to a budget, we tracked 2 to 3 months just to see what shit we honestly spend money on and what I needed to maybe eliminate or be more mindful of. For us, it was helpful after that to then come up with specific categories. So like you said, the tool I use is RocketMoney, and we link our bank accounts and it shows all the transactions. And the really cool thing about this is that you can also make categories. So let's just say you have a category for dining out, and you put when you dine out, all those transactions in that one bucket, so you can get the total of what that one bucket is. And so for us, we love that because we were also able to create customizable categories, and I'll share some of the examples of some of the customized categories that we had for our finances. So this means you can tailor your budget to what's most important to you, whether that's coffee, books, wellness activities, self-care. Seeing your spending this way helps identify where you can cut back or splurge a little. We ended up budgeting, we have like a miscellaneous category where we just budget $500 there. This is just shit that like has to happens. Like sometimes we have to get new water filter replacements, get a haircut. And again, those are not every month expenses. They're miscellaneous expenses that just happen. So we figured that every month when we were tracking, we were over $500 always. Like for some reason we were over $500 because something always happens. Sometimes we were under $500. So we just knew that it was better just to have it, because if we ended up not spending those $500 miscellaneous, and this is separate from our savings and all that, because we didn't want to take from our savings, we just wanted to have that $500 miscellaneous. Again, that's what worked for us. Not saying that's what you need to do, but for us, that's what we ended up having to do for our like spending categories and miscellaneous. We love to spend money on. I have to spend money on coffee, and I love to spend money on clothes. So we had a coffee budget, and then we also have a personal shopping budget. And this really helped me determine because I had to stick to that set budget and not go over it. Or if I wanted to go over it, I would basically say this month I'm not going to spend the budget amount and I'm going to put it in savings so that next month I can use those, the money I saved from last month and this month and maybe buy the purchase, right? So, because I have and I'll tell you, pretty transparent, I have an $80 like clothing budget. And so let's just say I want a shirt that costs $100. I don't know what shirt would cost $100, but if there was something that I really wanted to invest in that was like $100, well, I only have $80. Now, I could just spend $20 over and maybe take from another budget like my coffee, but I'd rather not. I'd rather just wait so I could see, do I really want this? And sometimes that helps because then the next month I'm like, oh, I don't really want this. And then I just end up saving it, So it's completely up to you what works for you, but that's what worked for me. So really thinking about creating those customizable categories for yourself. Like I said, I love RocketMoney. I believe that RocketMoney is free, and I think just like it's donation based. I think we only pay like $3 a month for it or something. After you've kind of got all the budgeting under control, you figured out all your net income, what you can actually spend, all of these things. Now you want to find where to trim those expenses. So start by reviewing maybe subscriptions you don't use. We have a category called personal subscriptions. So every time we're thinking about cutting out anything, we'll look at that category and we'll see, hey, we have Netflix, Hulu, Prime, and we haven't even watched Hulu for 3 months. Maybe we need to cancel that. I love that RocketMoney will actually cancel them for you if you need to. They'll also help you negotiate some of your bills. So sometimes it'll tell you like, okay, you may be paying more for your car insurance, or you may be paying more for your phone bill. Would you like us to negotiate the bill to be lowered? I personally haven't used that particular feature, but I've heard good things. So again, I really like that you can use it for that. But also consider your daily spending habits. Perhaps, again, I don't like this advice, but if you genuinely need to save more money and perhaps making coffee at home instead of buying it every day, right? Like I had a coffee addiction to get coffee outside. So now when I do get coffee, it just feels like a treat. So I do allow myself to get like coffee on Wednesdays and on Fridays. Fridays because it's usually my admin work day. And then Wednesdays is my day off. So I just like to get out of the house since I'm constantly either working virtually or just with clients. And so it's nice to just have something as a little treat. But again, obviously looking at my budget, my coffee budget. So again, think about your daily spending habits. What do you end up doing or daily spending that you just don't realize? Maybe it's like you're always getting a energy drink, and that may mean maybe we're still getting the energy drink, right? But we're going to Target and we're buying them in bulk, or we're going to Costco and we're buying them in bulk. That way we have it at the house. Again, I'm not saying you need to be drinking energy drinks. I'm just saying like sometimes little things like that can add up. I'm not saying it's going to give you this financial freedom, but it's going to help you with your spending habits. I want you to see that in terms of like, are you spending money on clothes all the time? Like why? If there's clothes in your closet that constantly have tags on, like what's happening, So you need to figure out where you're trimming your expenses, things like that maybe you no longer use. I know that I wasn't mindful of our, electricity bill. I just was always having it at a certain temperature and was not mindful of I would always be moving the AC, and that eventually we got a really big electricity bill. So little things that I just wasn't mindful before that I needed to be mindful again. So just think. I noticed that I was spending money on clothes every month, and I knew that eliminating that wasn't going to be helpful. It was just going to make me spend money regardless. So just having a budget helped curb the urge. I have what I call a purchasing wish list also. So when I want something, I put this in my purchasing wish list and I allow myself to think about it, see if I if I want it, see if there's not other things on that list that I would prefer. And that has been super helpful for me. I also got rid of TikTok because that was I don't know, it just felt like I was being fed a lot of content to purchase things, and I just did not like that. I'm also very mindful on this channel to even recommend things and stuff because I don't want it to feel like you need to purchase something to make your life better. I think there are free tools you can always use, but of course these are things that I've used that I'm really mindful of what I am sharing. I don't believe that there's 5 million Like, I can't understand how people have like 5 cleansers for their face. Like, I've been using the same cleanser for the past 3 years, or like the same makeup, things like that. Like, there are things where I'm like, maybe a new mascara that I want to try every now and then, but I buy the travel size instead of the big one, so I could really try it out before I even commit to it. So there's little things like that that I think can help when it comes to your spending habits or impulsive shopping. And those are just some of the things that I have thought about. If you have like spending issues or impulsive shopping concerns, I do have a video with Paige Pritchard, who is a spending coach. So that's a very popular video here on my channel, and I would love for you guys to check it out. Check out other, resources here on YouTube when it comes to impulsive shopping. For non-essential purchases, I stick to the 30-day rule. Like, wait 30 days, and if you still want that item, then think about buying it. You'll be surprised how often the urge to buy fades, saving you money in the long run. So that's just something to think about. Okay, so financial goals. Once we've talked about budgeting, impulsive shopping, financial goals, right? So with a clear view of your finances, it's time to set some realistic financial goals. Maybe you're saving up for a house, aiming to reduce debt. Write your goals down and break them into achievable steps. I do a video all about creating SMART goals, which I think will be so cool, because that is about making specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals that can help you really keep you on track. The reality is we can't focus on every financial goal all at once, and that's what people get wrong when it comes to they want to save, but they have debt, or they want a vacation but spend money on impulsive shopping decisions. So it's kind of like you have to first tackle what's holding you back so you can really have financial freedom to make decisions. So that's all I have to say about financial goals. Again, they have to be unique towards your situation. You hearing about my financial goals is not going to matter towards your financial goals. Maybe give you an inspiration, but for me, it's so important that you figure out like what is really happening with your situation. Now, the tools that I mentioned that I use are RocketMoney, and like I said, we also have a financial advisor. We've been working with her since 2019, and love working with our financial advisor. She had a lot of experience working with other women entrepreneurs, so that's why I really picked her. And both me and my partner have annual meetings with her, or we'll like email her if there's anything that we're thinking about. Like, I know we're thinking about our house, and so those are things that we're like planning to make sure it's the best decision for us. Or if we're thinking about career change, how is that gonna work when it comes to our personal financial goals, things like that. There's some of the 2 tools that I use. I hope these tips help you feel like you're in control and aware of your finances, and it gives you a good reset of where you're at and what goals you may want to focus on for the rest of the year. Everyone's financial journey is unique, so adapt these tips to fit your lifestyle and needs. Take the summer reset, refresh your finances. You'll be thanking yourself later. And if you have any budget tips or stories that you want to share in the comments, feel free. Don't forget to consider subscribing to the channel, hitting the like button. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in my next video.